It's been a while since we've done this. I'm David Esrati.
I'm Greg Hunter.
Greg's been living out west
in Laramie, Wyoming.
So we haven't had many chances to do this.
But we've had discussions on Facebook and all kinds of, as we try to work our way through this thing we called life.
So today we're going to talk about marijuana, more specifically medical marijuana, which is going to be legal in Ohio starting in September.
So do you know how it's going to actually work? I mean, I kind of know how it works in other states.
No, this is Ohio. We'd be the last people to find out how they're going to make it work. In fact, Beaver Creek thought, we need 6 extra months, so we're going to ban medical marijuana use in dispensaries and everything else from our city.
So is there some sort of infrastructure that we're talking about? When I look at these things, or I've looked at them in the past, is that states always say, oh, well, we have to test this marijuana and we have to make sure we have these little things that we put in place, barriers, or ideas of, well, we're going to tax you, so we got to figure out how to tell you that we're doing right by your tax dollars, which they never do.
Well, of course, it's always about the money, but here's the thing. The first initiative to have legal marijuana in the state of Ohio was run by private enterprise, and it got voted down by the public.
Unfortunately, I will say, I understand why people did it, because they didn't want to enrich the few.
Well, I totally agree, but
now the politicians want to enrich the few that they're connected to.
Right, so we've got a different situation, and it's only for medical uses. And so let's talk about some of the medical uses that medical marijuana comes in handy for. Greg?
Well, now okay, my experience is with the medical marijuana that I looked at outside Colorado is that we're all going to admit it's a way to get the nose under the tent. I mean, that's always been the argument against it, is
right,
that this is just a false flag.
No,
but in the end, if you start looking at, and the more I've looked at it, is that it actually does a great deal of things for people. If you
Such as?
Well, we can go, I mean, I was on the way in today, and of course people were talking about, Bob and Tom were talking about menstrual cycles, that it eased. Absolutely.
Okay.
Whoopi Goldberg's bound down that path.
Okay.
And I've talked to people, women, who use it for this particular instance.
But
now, will that be one of the things that Ohio allows?
Well,
Where Colorado, if you had a...
we have legislators playing doctor here, so who knows what they'll allow and what they won't. That's
well,
part
they
of the
play
problem.
science, too,
Yeah.
which is what they allow and what they don't.
But it can be used for appetite restoration for people undergoing chemotherapy, undergoing with Crohn's and some other issues where they don't eat enough or they forget to eat. It can increase the need to eat.
Oh, you've been worried about that with your parents, Aaron.
Well, my mother has been losing weight.
You would like to maybe try this if you could.
If I could. My mother has lost 10 pounds in the last 2 months because her husband is in the hospital and she doesn't know what to do, and she's lost her routine and she's lost her appetite, and so that would be a situation there. It's also been known, studies have said it works with PTSD. We've got 20 veterans dying a day. We've got an awful lot that have been overprescribed more powerful meds, and this is one of the things that's really interesting. Arguments are made about some medicines that are prescribed and regulated that really you can't really hurt yourself on. One of those being birth control pills. Another one I find really strange is, why do we have laws about contact lenses that you have to get an exam within 30 days of getting your first order of contact lenses, even though you don't need another exam for at least a year? Why can't you switch vendors? Oh, that's because the optometrists and ophthalmologists know that they have a good thing going, because an exam is a cost prohibitive barricade, and once they got you, they're going to keep you for a year or 2 years. I don't know anybody out there who's going to put the wrong contact lenses in their eyes on purpose, because
they won't be in there long.
No,
I can tell you that right now.
but these are the kinds of things that we have where legislation's sort of questionable and dubious and why they have it.
Well, isn't the medical and the medical delivery field like the last bastion of breaking down the barriers of free market kind of thing? In other words, we destroyed the auto industry, or we we decided that the free trade worldwide
Right.
would do these things.
Well, free trade and you can't cross-border sell medication, so
Right.
Canada gets
like that
the same thing
Canadian
cheap.
online pharmacy
Yeah.
for your blue pills out there, which, of course,
Your blue pills.
not my blue pills, your blue pills.
No, not
But-
my blue pills.
But that's another one that is widely used and widely done.
Right. So here we have a drug that if a kid gets a hold of and they OD,
There is no OD.
there is no OD.
They don't die from an overdose.
This
So-
is not like OxyContin or fentanyl or some of the other drugs that are regulated. This is pretty much, it's even less dangerous than alcohol, where
Way
it's
less.
very easy to get a whole bottle and have a good long drink.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you haven't, and you're not much of an alcohol user.
I'm a teetotaler, so I don't
That's
count.
right. So from a medicinal standpoint, alcohol is really only good for when you cut yourself and you want to sew yourself up or inebriate yourself to pull your teeth, maybe.
I don't even think it works that well for that. It works as a depressant, which most people don't realize. They drink to cheer themselves up, and it only makes it worse. But
Well, yes.
that just goes to show nobody's rational when it comes to these things.
Well, here's the problem with medical marijuana that we started to see. What we came to when I looked at Colorado, I think Colorado has been very, very.
Now, Colorado is all
But they started out with medical.
right. Okay.
So what occurred is that people didn't realize how fast the edible market was going to grow, and because of that, they didn't have any good information on, if you come out to Colorado and you change over from smoking things to eating things, what's the conversion rate for you and what's good for you as a dose factor?
Okay.
So because
what's happened?
well, people have.
Do people prefer edibles to smoking?
Absolutely, the edibles have gone way through the roof on sales value.
Even compared to vaping?
Yeah, well, I think vaping and those kinds of things. But if you really drop,
A little secret: when you go to the big festivals and all those people are vaping, it's not tobacco, people.
you're right, it isn't tobacco. But when you start looking around, and I've dropped into the stores before recreationally, and
So it's a 2-hour drive, right?
right, it's an hour drive.
Hour drive.
From Laramie to Fort Collins. Again, of course, once Colorado legalized, 2 or 3 days in the paper because Wyoming had so much oil money, which they don't anymore. They went out and bought 3 or 4 new drug dogs so they could get revenue. So if you are traveling through states that aren't, and Kansas, Nebraska, whatever, but you go in there and these little old ladies are coming, I'm telling you, it's a really weird thing to look around. There's a lot more people using it, and from a medicinal aspect.
You mean not only poor black people do heroin?
Well, heroin's a totally different story, and yes, I mean, when white
Little
people...
old ladies eat pot?
Yes, they eat pot. And they ask the question, hey, am I going to get arrested for this? Well, they think you can drive across state lines. I mean, I'm telling you, after they get used to using marijuana and using it in a responsible manner, they want to continue because they know it works. It's just like the opioid epidemic. I mean, if you know your dose and you are okay with it, like you used to be able with OxyContin,
Right.
you could get used to that dose, you would not die from it. Once you take that known dose away, people start to use heroin, which is not regulated. But the marijuana industry, because how they do their edibles, they extract it through butter, it's fairly dose known. So if you say you have 10 milligrams and that's what works for you,
Right.
that's all you need to take because it's 10 milligrams square.
Now, are they charging exorbitant amounts of money for these edibles? Hey, are there some edible shops that are high dollar and low dollar?
they're-
Are they regulated? How do they do this?
I think there are a lot. It ends up being, if you look at Colorado again, I think Colorado, because they're on the forefront, one, they raised the taxes up a lot. I've been to Oregon when they went over. I do a lot of traveling and I just study it because it's always been a fascination with me. I never understood why the drug war has gone on this long.
Right.
It's really been
Okay.
weird for me.
But are there gourmet edible shops and then just regular edible shops and they charge more, or is it the same price and they're competing on quality?
You know what? There's a bunch of different edible makers, and they are competing on how that delivery is for each of their customers.
Okay.
And I think it's the wild, wild west.
But is the pricing, is it set like minimum, everybody has to sell it for this price, or is it
No.
vary greatly?
It varies greatly, depends on the tax day they give off, but I think you're going to end up on some of these. Now, medical is always cheaper from a tax rate in Colorado
Right.
than it is recreation.
So they have the same stuff and there's a medical rate and a public rate?
Right.
Ah, interesting.
And they also regulate the recreational side to a lower amount.
Okay.
Like you can get 100 milligram bars if you're a recreational, but you can get like 300 milligram bars if you're a medical. Because there are people that have, once you do somewhat, I think, build up a tolerance. I don't know, I've talked to all the medical people, and the people that are in line, they go, we want medical because it's more regulated, they want it to be organic, they don't want to have
Right.
the pesticides and herbicides
Right.
and things like that. So,
But right now, there's no FDA in Colorado certifying any of this stuff. There's no oversight where they're testing and
Yeah,
the
but-
claims of organic are really true.
but down at the French restaurant, they're infusing butters with all kinds of orange peels
Right.
and all kinds of things. There's FDA's not doing that. So you're just taking an herb and you're infusing it through better living through
Oh,
chemistry.
is that why they call it an herb?
Well, you're taking an herb and you're infusing it into butter through a chemical process.
So here we have
It's like food, chemistry.
Here we have the government regulating a food ingredient.
Exactly, it's
Yeah.
a food ingredient. Do you need a food ingredient regulated?
No other food ingredients I know of that are regulated like that.
So a
Oh my
natural,
God, you ate yellowtail twice last week. You can't have any more.
yeah, right. Right.
You might have too high iodine levels. I'm honestly, I'm bewildered about government intervention in this and what it gets us other than tax dollars and protects pharmaceutical companies because, after you start you start using medicinal marijuana, you don't need sleeping pills anymore. You might not need antidepressants anymore. Oh my God, those are big money products, right?
Well, I do know a lot of people that are on, that have to take a daily white pill to either go to sleep, Ambien, and other, and people that have converted over to this on their own experimental way seem to not need those things anymore. Now that is a big threat to both, the last big manufacturing medical industry. That's really all we have left.
So if you have medicinal pot
Yes.
prescription, you get some sort of ID that says it or some sort of doctor's slip. And do they say you can only have 300 milligrams a week like they regulate out
No, again,
Oxy or these other restricted drugs? How do they regulate it?
some politicians were absolutely correct in the fact that this is the nose under the tent. However Colorado got it passed on the medical side is really kind of fascinating. The amount that you could buy under a medical was way over what you would ever need. It would be like you could supply, the entire U.S. if you really got down to it. Because that's what some people were doing. Taking their medical card and
buying,
overbuying
right.
and, shipping it to Ohio. But really.
Oh, no, nobody in Ohio bought any of that.
No, we can't allow Americans to participate in that. We can only allow Mexicans to ship weed. We need to blame somebody.
But there's a real problem here because as each state approves one or the other and has their own rules and regulations, again, this is also a medical issue, but then a whole segment of our economy or our medical field, the VA, which is federally regulated, is currently prohibited from using medical marijuana. So you can be a VA patient in Colorado and the VA cannot prescribe it or let you use it, so a veteran might have to go to a private physician and then have to pay out of pocket. Or if in Ohio it's legalized for medical, or in a state where it's not legal, there's no resource, but this has just got to go away. And we're still locking people up for growing herbs.
Well, I think, and even, this is my suspicion, even in Ohio, I think they're actually doubling down on enforcement. in my opinion, because they are trying to get the preferred growers. They're trying to drive out the people that have been doing
Right.
it forever, so they can have their own growers come in.
But hold on. Let's point out something. Has there been an economic boom due to taxes placed on marijuana in Colorado?
Absolutely.
So what has Colorado done with this money?
Well,
Infrastructure?
here's the thing with everything about
did
money,
they buy a sports stadium?
Just like the lottery for education.
Did they buy a sports stadium with it? What have they done with it?
They've filled in the holes. They've done stuff with it. They just take it in. Look, the revenue part. There is no subject out of the marijuana. If you read the
So they don't break it out as a separate fund like Ohio does with our lottery, which was supposed to solve educational.
well, it's like
funding.
6%, right?
Yeah.
But really, whatever you take away, it's just like the educational. They said, okay, we're going to use 6% of that to fund education.
Right.
Well, the general fund will just drop 6% off.
Right.
So really,
Roads in Colorado were getting work done when I drove through last year, and in general, the roads were much better. However, I did run into one traffic jam on my motorcycle, and I couldn't lane split, and I sat there and I kept smelling this perfume
well,
rising out of the cars. And the only other place I smelled that was in LA. Didn't smell it in Boise.
Well, here's the thing about weed in Colorado. Like if you're driving down 25, you may think you're smelling somebody next to you, but that actually could be a warehouse drying it next to the road too.
It was smoke. It was somebody burning it, Greg. Anyways, we've run a little long here. Hope you found this interesting, and until next time that Greg decides to visit his hometown, we'll see you.
Have a good one.